So you're ready to dive into Andy Smith's Achieve Your Goals, huh? That bright yellow cover with the pictures of a map and a steering wheel and even a beach chair? Yeah, that one.
I know it. It definitely grabs your attention.
But are you maybe thinking, okay, this is great, but where do I even start with all this?
Yeah, it's a common feeling. There are a lot of techniques in there, and it can be kind of overwhelming trying to put them all into practice. But that's exactly why we're doing this deep dive.
Exactly, to break down the key takeaways and then think about how we can actually apply them to our own lives.
Right, because reading about a technique is one thing,
Totally.
but actually using it in your life, that's where the real magic happens.
And that's when things really change, right?
Yeah.
So let's start with the foundation that Smith lays out in the book, which is taking responsibility.
And he really means that in an empowering way.
Okay.
It's not about blaming yourself for past mistakes. It's more about recognizing that you have the power to choose how you respond to things and shape your future.
I like that. So it's about realizing we're not just, passive passengers in our own lives.
Right, exactly.
We have the power to make choices.
And that leads into a really interesting point he makes about failure. Instead of seeing it as this, dead end, he wants us to reframe it as feedback.
Okay, but how do we actually do that?
Yeah, I mean, it's easy to say, don't dwell on your failure.
Right, but it's so much harder when you're in the middle of it.
Right, exactly. But when you're feeling that way, it can be tough. But Smith's point is that instead of asking yourself, why am I such a failure? Try asking, what can I learn from this experience?
Okay, so an example of that.
Let's say you set a goal to start exercising every day.
Yeah.
But then, you only managed to stick to it for a week before you gave up. Instead of beating yourself up about it, ask yourself, okay, what got in the way there? Was it the time of day I was trying to work out? Was it the type of exercise I chose? Or maybe I just need to find a workout buddy for some accountability.
Oh, that's a good point. It's like shifting your focus from self-criticism to, actually solving the problem.
Right.
And I think that kind of ties into his whole concept of cause and effect, right?
Right, exactly. Smith argues that a lot of people, they kind of put themselves on the effect end of things. They feel like their emotions are just happening to them or that other people are controlling how they feel.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that. Sometimes I catch myself saying things like, that comment really upset me.
Right.
Or, this traffic is making me so stressed.
Right.
But in those moments, I'm kind of giving my power away.
Exactly. You're letting those external factors control your emotional state.
Mm-hmm.
So the key is to shift to the cause side of the equation.
Okay. How do we do that?
You can choose how you respond to a comment. You can choose how you manage your stress in traffic.
So it's about taking ownership of our reactions.
Exactly.
Instead of letting our circumstances control us. Which leads perfectly into his next section on Develop Your Personal Power, where he introduces these techniques for cultivating that sense of control.
One that really stood out to me was his Becoming Calm exercise.
Oh, yeah. Tell me more about that one.
So it's this really simple but effective way to just relax and center yourself.
Okay.
Especially in a stressful situation. You've been feeling a bit anxious about that big presentation coming up at work.
Oh, yeah, definitely. This could be super helpful.
So Smith says this technique involves focusing on your peripheral vision, almost like you're expanding your awareness outwards. And he says that this can help to quiet your mind and kind of release tension in your body.
So I'm trying to picture it, you're about to present, you take a deep breath, and instead of hyper-focusing on all the faces in the audience,
yeah,
you just soften your gaze and let your peripheral vision take over.
Right.
I could see how that would be calming.
And the best part about this technique is you can really do it anywhere, anytime. You don't need any special equipment or a quiet room or anything.
So you could even do it stuck in traffic.
Yeah, exactly. It's all about having tools like this that you can use to manage your emotional state no matter what's going on around you.
It's like you're taking back control of the steering wheel.
Exactly.
And speaking of control, Smith also talks about clearing out all that mental clutter that can really clog up our minds.
Yes, he has a whole section called Clear Your Inner Clutter.
Oh, okay.
And it's not about organizing your closet or anything.
Right.
It's about all those mental to-dos and worries that we carry around in our heads that keep us from focusing on what's truly important.
Oh, I know exactly what you mean. It's like having 20 tabs open in your brain all the time.
Yeah, it's hard to concentrate when it's like that. In a cluttered mind, it's just like a cluttered desk, It makes it hard to focus and get things done.
So how do we clean up that mental mess?
He has a bunch of great tips. One technique he suggests is a simple mindfulness exercise. You close your eyes, focus on your breath, and just notice any sensations in your body. Feel the coolness of the air as you breathe in and the warmth as you breathe out.
Oh, that sounds so simple, but also effective.
It is, and it just takes a couple minutes. Even 5 minutes of focused breathing can make a big difference in your ability to concentrate.
Okay, I like that. It's like hitting the refresh button on your brain.
Exactly.
But he doesn't stop there, right? He also talks about the power of our unconscious mind.
Yes, this is where things get really interesting. He actually describes the unconscious mind as a faithful servant working for you.
Whoa, I like that. It's like having a loyal butler who's always there ready to help. But how do we communicate effectively with this butler to, help us achieve our goals?
Well, he suggests trying this. Right before you fall asleep, give your unconscious mind a specific problem to solve. And the idea is that your unconscious will continue to work on it while you're sleeping.
Oh, wow. That's fascinating. It's like planting a seed in your mind and letting it grow overnight.
Exactly. And it ties into another point he makes, which is that your unconscious mind doesn't understand the word not.
What do you mean?
So, for example, instead of saying, don't eat that donut,
Which, kind of makes you focus on the donut.
yeah, makes me want a donut right now.
He says, try saying something like, I'm going to choose a healthy snack instead.
Oh, okay. So you're focusing on the positive, the desired outcome.
Exactly. So by becoming more aware of our language and how we phrase things,
Yeah.
we can actually start to shift our thinking and our behavior in a more positive direction.
Which seems like the perfect segue into the next section on motivation. Are you ready to explore that?
Absolutely. Let's dive into the world of motivation.
Let's get motivated.
So we're really getting to the heart of it now with motivation because it's such a key ingredient in achieving any goal. And Smith really breaks it down by differentiating between two main types, toward motivation and away from motivation. So what do you think? Which one sounds more effective for reaching those long-term goals? Toward motivation just sounds more positive. Like you're moving towards something you actually want, and away from feels more like you're running away from something you dislike.
Right.
Which I don't see how that would really be sustainable in the long run.
Yeah, you're totally right. Toward motivation is all about pursuing those things that really excite you, the things that align with what you truly value in life and bring you that sense of fulfillment. Think about how it feels when you're working towards something you're really passionate about.
Yeah.
There's that sense of energy and purpose that pulls you forward.
Right? Okay, I can feel it just thinking about it. So how does this actually apply to setting and achieving goals?
Yeah.
Can you give me a concrete example of this?
Sure. So let's say your goal is to get a promotion at work, and away from motivation might sound like, I want to get out of this dead-end job, or I'm so tired of my boss micromanaging me.
Right.
And, those are valid feelings, but they're focused on what you don't want. Whereas a toward motivation might be something like, I want to take on more responsibility and lead a team, or I'm excited to develop my skills and contribute at a higher level.
Oh, yeah, I see the difference there. The toward motivations feel much more inspiring and empowering.
Exactly. It's like you're being pulled toward the goal instead of being pushed away from something you dislike.
I like that.
And Smith really makes the case that toward motivation is way more likely to get you consistent results because it taps into those intrinsic desires and values. It's not about just escaping a negative situation, but about actually creating something positive and fulfilling.
This is making me think about my own goals. Sometimes I get so caught up in what's not working in my life that I totally forget to appreciate what is actually going well. Does Smith talk about that at all?
He does. He has a whole section called Look at Your Life Appreciatively.
Okay.
And he really encourages us to shift our focus, away from what's wrong and look at what's already working.
I love that. It's kind of like that saying, is the glass half empty or half full?
Yeah.
And Smith is definitely a glass half full kind of guy.
Totally. And he backs it up with all this research from social psychologists who found that experiencing positive emotions can actually broaden our thinking and help us see the bigger picture. And it's not just about, feeling good, although that's a great side effect.
Right.
It's really about fostering creativity and opening ourselves up to new possibilities.
So you're saying being positive is good for our problem-solving skills?
It is, and it can even have physiological benefits, like helping us recover from stress more quickly.
Wow. So it's good for our minds and bodies.
It is.
What are some of his suggestions for actually cultivating this appreciative mindset?
Well, one thing he recommends is keeping a gratitude journal, where you write down all the things you're thankful for each day. And it
Yeah.
doesn't have to be anything big, even small things like having a delicious cup of coffee in the morning or noticing a beautiful sunset.
Those are good ones.
Those can shift your perspective. And he also suggests asking yourself, what can I learn from this when you're going through a tough time?
Oh, I like that it's so easy to get caught up in the negativity of a difficult situation.
Right.
But if we can try to find at least one lesson or, a silver lining in it, it can make such a difference.
Exactly. And he even talks about the power of helping others. When you shift your focus away from your own problems and onto making a positive impact in someone else's life, it can be so fulfilling.
That's true. It helps to put things in perspective and realize, you do have something to offer the world.
He even mentions this concept called appreciative inquiry, which is this whole approach to personal and organizational change
Okay.
that's built on focusing on what's working well and then building on those strengths.
That is so much more positive than just dwelling on the problems.
It is. And one exercise he suggests is to actually rate your life on a scale of 1 to 10.
Okay.
Then recall some positive events and rate it again. And you might be surprised by how much just shifting your focus can actually change your whole outlook.
I'm definitely going to try that.
Yeah.
What about self-awareness? Does he talk about how important it is to really understand ourselves better?
He has a whole section on develop your self-awareness.
Okay.
And he encourages us to use metaphors to gain insights into our experiences.
Metaphors. What do you mean?
So let's say you're feeling stuck in a rut. You could try using a metaphor like, my life is a train journey.
Okay.
This helps you to sort of step back and see your situation from a fresh perspective. Like, are you even on the right track? Are you the conductor of your own train? Or are you just a passenger? Maybe you need to get off at the next station and completely change directions.
Whoa, those are powerful questions. Like those
Oh.
metaphors can unlock those hidden meanings
Yeah.
and help us get clear on what we really want.
And he actually says that even negative metaphors can be helpful
Okay.
if we pay attention to the emotions they bring up. Like if you find yourself saying something like work is a nightmare, well, that might be a sign that you need to make some changes in your work environment, or even think about a whole new career path.
Right. So it's all about paying attention to those metaphors and asking ourselves, what is this telling me about how I'm feeling and what maybe needs to change?
Exactly. And he also emphasizes how important it is to recognize ourself in every situation.
Okay.
It's easy to get caught up in that idea of finding yourself.
Yeah.
But Smith says you already have a self. It's just a matter of becoming more aware of it.
That's an interesting distinction. So it's less about searching for something outside of ourselves and more about just cultivating a deeper understanding of who we already are.
Right. And to do that, he suggests techniques like journaling or meditation, or even just paying closer attention to your thoughts, feelings, and behaviors throughout the day.
That makes sense.
He also recommends charting your personal highs and lows, by listing out significant events in your life and analyzing what led up to each one.
Oh, that's a cool idea. It's like creating a roadmap of your own life.
It is. And once you have a better understanding of yourself, then you can start to make more conscious choices that align with your values and your vision for the future.
Which seems like a great transition into part 2 of the book, where Smith actually gets into the practical steps of setting and achieving those goals.
You ready to decide what's important and really make a roadmap for your own success?
I'm ready. Let's do it. Okay, so we're back and ready to dive into the practical stuff with part 2 of Achieve Your Goals. It's called Decide What's Important, and it sounds pretty important to me.
It is. We can have all the motivation and self-awareness in the world, but if we don't have a clear vision of what we're actually working toward,
Yeah.
all that effort's going to be kind of scattered and ineffective. It's like setting off on a trip with no destination in mind.
Okay, I see what you mean. So how do we avoid getting lost on that journey?
Well, Smith says we need to look ahead and define our time horizon.
Time horizon.
It's basically just a fancy way of saying your long-term vision. He says that having a really solid sense of where you want to be in the future, it can actually help you make better decisions in the present.
That makes sense. Like if you know your ultimate destination, you can choose paths that lead you in the right direction, even if those paths aren't always the easiest ones.
Exactly. It's about being proactive instead of reactive. So you're not just responding to whatever pops up in the moment, you're consciously creating your future.
So how far ahead should we be looking?
Smith suggests thinking about your goals for 6 years from now, 3 years from now, and 1 year from now. It's kind of like creating this roadmap for the future with some checkpoints along the way.
And I guess that can help break down those really big long-term goals into smaller, more manageable steps.
Exactly. And it helps you prioritize what needs to happen first.
Speaking of prioritizing, I feel like Smith also brings up Stephen Covey's idea of urgent versus important tasks, right?
He does. You know that feeling of being pulled in like a million different directions all the time?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Emails, phone calls, deadlines. It never ends.
Yeah, it can be tough.
But Smith reminds us that it's crucial to focus on those important tasks, the ones that are really going to move us closer to our long-term goals. Even if they're not screaming for our immediate attention like those urgent ones sometimes are.
That reminds me of that saying, don't mistake activity for achievement.
That's a good one. You can be crazy busy all day long, but if you're not working on those things that really matter, you're not making any real progress.
Right. It's like spinning your wheels.
Exactly. And to help us combat that procrastination, he gives us this little mantra. What am I putting off right now? Do it immediately without conducting any more internal will I, won't I debates.
I like that. It's like just take action, stop overthinking it.
Yeah.
So we've looked ahead, we've prioritized. What's the next step?
Now it's time to figure out what our values are. Know your values is what he calls it. This step is so important for everything else because our values are basically our compass in life, you know?
That's a good way to put it. So if we're not super clear on our values, we might be chasing after goals that don't actually line up with what's really important to us.
Exactly. And to help us with this, Smith has this whole step-by-step process for figuring out and clarifying those values. He suggests brainstorming values for specific areas of your life.
Like work, relationships, personal growth, stuff like that.
Right, all of that. Then you prioritize those values and see if there are any that are kind of clashing with each other.
It's like doing a personal values audit.
Yeah, that's a good way to think about it.
Yeah.
And then he makes this distinction between what he calls means values and ends values.
Well, okay, that's a new one for me.
So means values are things we value because of what they can do for us, what they can bring us.
Like money, status, things like that.
Exactly. But then ends values are the things that are already deeply meaningful to us, like love, creativity, freedom.
Can you give me an example of that?
Yeah, so imagine someone who values success a lot. Now, that's a means value, right? But if you dig a little deeper, you might find that what they're really after is the feeling of accomplishment, or maybe being able to make a real difference in the world.
Those sound like ends values to me.
Right. The ends values are all about those deeper rewards, the things that bring us a sense of purpose and make us feel really fulfilled no matter what we achieve externally.
Okay, I see the difference. And you're saying Smith encourages us to focus on those ends values when setting goals.
Absolutely. That's where we find that true, lasting satisfaction.
So we've looked ahead, figured out our values. Are we finally ready to set some goals?
Almost. Before that, we got to clear the blocks. These are those inner obstacles that can trip us up, even if we have a really clear vision and we're motivated.
Oh, man. I think we've all got some of those lurking around somewhere.
We do. And one of the biggest blocks he talks about is what he calls limiting beliefs.
What are those?
They're those sneaky beliefs we hold about ourselves and the world that can really hold us back. Like, I'm not good enough. I'm too old. I don't have what it takes. Things like that.
Ouch, those can sting. They can really hold us back if we let them.
For sure. And Smith actually calls these hypnotic suggestions because they affect us without us even realizing it.
So how do we break free from those?
Well, the first step is recognizing them. Smith says to pay attention to your self-talk. You know, those conversations we have in our heads?
Yeah.
That's where those limiting beliefs often hang out. He even gives us a list of words that are like red flags for these beliefs. Words like should, must, can't, always, and never.
Okay, that's helpful. I'll be on the lookout for those in my own head. So once you spot those beliefs, then what?
Write them down. Then really challenge them. Like, are they really true? Is there actual evidence to back them up?
Put them on trial.
Exactly. And then to kind of loosen their grip on you, try turning them into questions.
How do you mean?
So instead of saying, I don't have the time, ask yourself, how can I make time for this? It's about finding solutions, not dwelling on the problem.
Yeah, I get it.
He even has a technique called rehearsing new beliefs, where you basically create this mental movie in your head where you see yourself acting from a new, more positive belief. It's like giving your subconscious a new script to work from.
Oh, I like that. Yeah. It's like practicing for a big performance, but the performance is your life.
That's a good way to put it.
So we've identified those limiting beliefs, and we're challenging them. What's next?
Dealing with problems. Smith's got a whole section on that. He reminds us that problems are just a part of life, right?
Right.
But we do get to choose how we deal with them. And he's all about finding solutions.
Okay.
He encourages us to picture what our life would be like if the problem were already solved, and then use that image to guide what we do.
It's kind of like working backward from the solution. You figure out the steps to get there.
Right. He even suggests this question called the miracle question. It's, if this problem disappeared tomorrow, how would you know? What would be different? It gets us thinking about the solution, not the problem itself.
That's interesting. I can see how that would be helpful.
And the cool thing is, sometimes those problems actually turn out to be opportunities in disguise.
Yeah, you just have to look at them from a different angle.
Exactly. Problems can push us to grow, maybe learn new skills, become more resilient. Now, another block he talks about, and this one is something most of us struggle with, is deal with other people.
Oh, yeah. Relationships can be tough.
Totally. They're complex. But Smith gives us some tools to help navigate those tricky interpersonal situations.
Okay, what's he got for us on that front?
He starts by reminding us that we all have our own perspective, right? Shaped by our experiences and beliefs and values. And it's easy to get stuck in our own way of seeing things and assume everyone else should see it the same way.
I'm totally guilty of that. It can be so frustrating when people don't see it my way.
But Smith wants us to step back and try to be more objective. He calls it keeping 3 viewpoints in mind.
Okay, what are those?
You got to consider your own viewpoint, the other person's viewpoint, and then try to imagine it from the perspective of someone who's not involved at all, like a neutral observer.
That's a good way to cool things down when there's conflict.
Yeah.
And to try to see it from their side, like putting on some empathy glasses.
Exactly. And that helps us be more compassionate too, which is never a bad thing.
Yeah, sometimes you just got to step back.
Yeah.
So then what?
Well, Smith brings up this concept called projection. It's the tendency to see our own stuff in other people, even if it's not really there.
That's interesting.
So, say you're feeling insecure about your work.
Okay.
You might start taking every little comment from your boss as a sign that they're unhappy with you, even if that's not what they're trying to say at all.
It's like you're making up a story based on your own fears.
Right. So Smith encourages us to use those difficult people as a chance to learn about ourselves. What's our role in the conflict? What's the situation showing us about ourselves?
Okay, so it's about taking responsibility. I like that.
And this kind of thinking can help us learn to communicate better and build healthier relationships. So are we ready to actually get into goal setting now?
Let's do it.
Part 4 of the book is all about that. Create the vision you want. Smith brings all the pieces we've talked about together and creates a framework for setting goals and, more importantly, achieving them.
Okay, let's get into it. What's the first step?
He starts by stressing the importance of actually having goals in the first place. Might seem obvious, but I think a lot of us just kind of drift through life without a clear sense of where we're headed.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
But Smith says having goals gives our life direction, purpose. Without them, we're just reacting to whatever comes at us.
Instead of making things happen.
Exactly. He talks about how having a vision of where you want to go and taking action to get there, it brings this feeling of freedom and mental energy. It's completely different from feeling like you're stuck and things are just happening to you.
I love that. I've definitely felt both of those things.
Oh, yeah, me too. Now, get this. He even makes this distinction between enjoyment and pleasure.
Okay, that's interesting. What's the difference?
So he says enjoyment comes from pushing yourself, working towards a goal that's challenging, while pleasure is that instant gratification kind of thing.
Okay, so enjoyment is more about the process, the journey of working towards something meaningful, while pleasure is just that quick hit.
Exactly. And Smith argues that real, lasting happiness comes from going for that enjoyment instead of always chasing after pleasure. It's about making sure your goals match up with your values and working towards something that really lights you up inside.
That makes sense. It's like the difference between grabbing a candy bar for a quick sugar rush and taking the time to cook a delicious, healthy meal that you really put effort into. One's about that instant gratification, and the other is about the whole experience, the process, and the deeper satisfaction that comes with it.
That's such a good analogy. Okay, so next, Smith gets into the nitty-gritty of setting those goals. He has a whole section called Make Goal Setting Work, and this is where he introduces his POWER process.
The POWER process. Tell me more about that.
It's an acronym. Ready for this? It stands for positive thinking, own your goal, specify what and when, consider all the effects, and ensure that the route is known and feasible.
Wow, that's a mouthful. Let's break it down. So positive thinking, that's about focusing on what we do want, not what we don't want.
You got it. It's framing your goals in a way that feels positive and empowering.
Okay, I like that. And own your goal. I'm guessing that means taking responsibility for making it happen.
It does. It's about being fully committed, no excuses.
And specify what and when? That sounds like setting deadlines.
Exactly. Making sure your goal is crystal clear and measurable, and then you've got consider all the effects.
So that means really thinking through the potential consequences of achieving that goal.
Absolutely, both the good and the bad, and making sure your goal really aligns with those values we talked about earlier.
Got it. And last but not least, ensure that the route is known and feasible. Sounds like it's time to make a plan.
Exactly. It's all about breaking that goal down into those smaller steps and figuring out what resources and support you need to make it happen.
That's a lot to consider.
Yeah.
But I can see how that framework can make goal setting way more effective.
Yeah.
Now, what about our unconscious mind? Does that play a role too?
Oh, absolutely. Smith says it's crucial to engage your unconscious mind in this process. He suggests really getting into it with visualization, creating vivid pictures in your mind of yourself actually achieving those goals.
Like a mental movie of your dream life.
Exactly. And he also wants us to free up our energy by decluttering our physical space.
Okay, that's interesting.
The idea is that getting rid of clutter around us helps clear out some of that mental clutter, too.
I've definitely noticed that. When my desk is a disaster, my mind feels all over the place.
Totally. And he even has a good tip for decluttering. If you haven't used something in a year, toss it.
That's a good one. Okay, so what else does he talk about?
Oh, this is a big one. He wants us to really understand the difference between a need and a want when we set goals. He says that goals based on a need can feel kind of desperate or urgent.
Like, I need to make more money because I'm barely scraping by.
Exactly. But goals that are driven by a want, they tend to be more aligned with those things that truly make us happy.
So instead of I need to make more money, maybe it's I want to make more money so I can have more freedom to travel.
Exactly. That's a goal that's coming from a positive place. It's something you're excited about, not just something you feel pressured to do.
Okay, that makes sense. So we've set our goals, cleared the blocks, brought in our unconscious minds. Now what?
Now it's time to make those goals happen. And Smith has a whole section in the book called Getting There, where he offers tons of practical advice for turning those goals into reality.
Okay, I'm ready to hear it.
Well, he starts off by reminding us that change takes time and effort. He talks about research suggesting it takes at least 21 days to build a new habit.
So it's a marathon, not a sprint.
Right. And he encourages us to switch off our autopilot.
What does that mean?
It means becoming more aware of our thoughts and feelings rather than just going through the motions without really thinking about them.
Be present, basically.
Exactly. And he's got some good tips for staying focused. Write your goals down, tell someone about them, and visualize yourself actually achieving them.
I've heard that writing things down can really help solidify them in your mind.
Totally. And when you share your goals with someone else, it creates a sense of accountability.
Like you don't want to let them down.
Right. And then visualization. That's powerful stuff.
Yeah, it's almost like you're programming your unconscious mind for success.
It is. Now, another strategy he talks about is working backward from your desired outcome.
What does that look like?
You start with the end in mind, and then you map out the steps you need to take to get there, kind of like reverse engineering your success.
That makes a lot of sense. It breaks things down into smaller, more manageable pieces.
Exactly. He also encourages us to play to our strengths, figure out what you're good at, and then try to delegate those tasks that drain your energy or the things that just don't feel like a good fit for your natural abilities.
So true. You don't have to be good at everything, and it's okay to ask for help.
Absolutely. And Smith wants us to check in with ourselves, too. He talks about raising your self-awareness by asking yourself questions like, how do I recharge my batteries? How do I know I'm doing a good job? Am I getting bogged down in the details or staying focused on the big picture?
It's all about being more in tune with yourself.
Right. And then he reminds us that we often act in accordance with our own self-image. You know, if you see yourself as capable and successful, you're more likely to actually achieve those things.
It's that whole self-fulfilling prophecy thing again. Believe in yourself, and good things are more likely to happen.
And to start building that belief, he says to try making just one small change in the direction you want to go.
Baby steps.
Exactly. It gives you a little win to build on.
And you mentioned earlier about not comparing ourselves to others, right?
He talks about that too. It can really drag us down. He has a great suggestion for this. Instead of comparing yourself to others, compare yourself to where you were before. Look at how far you've come.
That's a great way to shift your perspective.
Right. It's about celebrating your own progress, not getting caught up in what everyone else is doing.
I needed to hear that today.
Me too. Now, something else that's super important for reaching goals is maintaining your energy.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense. You're not going to get much done if you're running on empty.
Totally. So he suggests taking care of your physical health, eating right, exercising, and getting enough sleep. But it's not just about that. It's also about noticing those times when your energy dips and finding ways to rebalance throughout the day.
Taking breaks, getting some fresh air, maybe a quick meditation, things like that.
Yep, all those things. And lastly, he reminds us to learn from our mistakes.
Oh, that's huge. No one's perfect, right? We all mess up.
Absolutely. But the key is to see those setbacks as chances to learn and grow.
Instead of beating ourselves up about it.
Right. Smith suggests taking some time when things don't go as planned and asking yourself, what can I learn from this? What can I do differently next time? That way, you're not just seeing it as failure, you're getting valuable feedback.
Love that reframe. It takes away a lot of the sting.
It does. And then he wraps up the book with a really cool section called Beyond Your Goals, where he explores the idea that achieving your goals is about way more than just external stuff.
It's about who we become along the way, right?
Exactly. It's personal growth and transformation. He even brings up Maslow's hierarchy of needs, that pyramid thing where basic survival needs are at the bottom, and at the very top, you've got self-actualization.
I've heard of that. It's the idea that once we have the basics covered, we start reaching for something more, that feeling of being fully alive and living a life of meaning.
Exactly. And Smith suggests that real happiness comes from aligning our goals with those deep values and striving for that self-actualization, fulfilling your potential and living a life that really matters to you.
So what's the takeaway here?
Reaching our goals isn't just about ticking things off a to-do list. It's about becoming the best version of ourselves along the way. It's a journey, not just a destination. And there are going to be bumps in the road.
Oh, definitely.
But if we have the right tools and mindset, we can handle those challenges and achieve amazing things.
That's a great note to end on. So now that you've gotten a taste of Smith's approach, what's one small thing you can do today to start putting these ideas into practice? Even a tiny change can make a big difference over time.
Think about what really resonated with you from this deep dive. Was it changing how you view failure? Maybe that becoming calm technique, or shifting to that toward motivation? Pick one thing and give it a try this week. You might be surprised at what happens.
And remember, you don't have to do it all at once. Just take it one step at a time. Keep moving forward, and before you know it, you'll be well on your way to achieving your goals and creating the life you want.